Welcome to Strong, Confident, and Informed, the podcast where we go beyond surface level fitness advice and actually help you understand what's driving your results. I'm Danielle Lemoyne, an online fitness coach who helps women build strength, lose fat, and most importantly, stay consistent without constantly starting over. Sometimes we stay stuck way longer than we really need to. Not because we don't care or not because we're lazy, but because we keep avoiding the things that are actually getting in our way. And honestly, I see this all the time. People say, I feel like I'm trying so hard, or they don't understand why nothing's changing and they feel like they're doing everything. But when we actually slow down and look at the full picture, there's usually a disconnect somewhere. And I want you to listen to this episode openly. Not defensively, not trying to justify every little thing, but just honestly with yourself. Because this is the stuff that actually changes people. And honestly, I've had to learn a lot of this myself too. I don't think people realize that even as a coach, I still have seasons where I have to check back in with my own alignment. There have absolutely been times where I wanted a result, but my lifestyle wasn't fully supporting it yet. Even recently with my running. When I first started getting more serious about running longer distances, there was a part of me that wanted to improve quickly. I wanted better endurance, better pacing, definitely better recovery, and just stronger performance overall. But I also had to be honest with myself about what that actually required. I couldn't expect my pace to improve and my recovery to improve and my endurance to improve if I wasn't consistently doing the things. Not just all the exciting runs and not just the long runs, but the easy ones as well, the slower runs and the repetitiveness of it all, and even the days that I didn't feel like running. And that's what actually builds your fitness. And that's the truth with almost everything in health and fitness. People want the result without fully accepting that the process creates the result. Now, the first thing I see a lot of the time is people are not nearly as consistent as they think they are. And I know that's probably not what people want to hear, but it's actually true. Most people remember the workouts they did complete, the meals that they did get right, or the days that they actually fully felt on track. But they tend to forget to fully account for those skipped workouts or the weekends that drifted and the handfuls of snacks here and there, the meals out, the I'll start over tomorrow days, and with the weeks where honestly things just slowly unravel. So in their head, it feels like I've been trying for months, but when you zoom out, there actually hasn't been enough consistency for the body to respond to it. And your body doesn't respond to your intentions. It responds to your repeated behavior. That's it. And honestly, I've experienced this myself as well. There have been times in my own journey where I felt frustrated that I wasn't seeing the result I wanted. But when I looked honestly at things, I wasn't as locked in as I thought I was. Maybe my nutrition had drifted more than I realized, a couple extra snacks here or there. Maybe my stress was impacting my consistency. Maybe I was mentally trying harder than I was behaviorally following through with it. And I think that's an important distinction because mentally caring about your goals and physically living in alignment with them are not always the same thing. And the second thing is this: people are active, they are, but they're not actually progressing anything. And there's a difference. You can absolutely be working out regularly, but if you're using the same weights, doing the same reps, or you're stopping every set when it starts to just feel a little bit uncomfortable, if you're never tracking anything, you're never pushing anything forward, your body eventually adapts to that. And once it adapts, it has no reason to change anymore. That's where progressive overload comes in. And I think a lot of people think that they're progressive overloading already, but they're really just repeating things. There's no actual progression happening. And I think this is something I've become even more aware of over the last year with my own training as well. When I shifted back into intentional strength work and more powerlifting style training, I realized really quickly that progress required more than just showing up. I had to track my lifts. I had to push my loads gradually. I had to tolerate the discomfort and repeat the basics consistently because your body adapts fast. And if you stay in the exact same comfort zone forever, your body stays there too. The next thing we're going to talk about is nutrition. And honestly, this is probably one of the biggest ones. A lot of people say, I'm eating pretty well, but pretty well is pretty vague. And vague doesn't create measurable results, especially if your goal is fat loss. Because fat loss requires a calorie deficit. And a calorie deficit doesn't just happen because you think you're eating healthy. They happen from actual intake over time. And this is where people get frustrated because they'll track inconsistently. They're going to estimate their portions, eat very differently on the weekends, skip maybe your meals out that you're tracking, forget snacks and drinks. Maybe you're going to emotionally eat during stressful weeks. But then they still believe that they're consistently in a deficit. And I think this is where people accidentally stay disconnected from the reality. Because they're emotionally attached to the idea that they're trying without objectively looking at their actual behaviors. And again, I'm not saying this to shame anyone. I'm saying it because awareness matters. You cannot make informed adjustments from incomplete information. You just can't. I've had to do this myself too, even recently when I was increasing my running volume. There were days I was genuinely hungrier. Recovery demands were higher. My body just needed more support. And I had to stop assuming and actually pay attention. Because if I just emotionally reacted to hunger, fatigue, or cravings without that awareness, my intake could drift really quickly without me realizing it. And honestly, that's what happens to a lot of people. Not because they're failing, but because they stop paying attention objectively. And I think this is where a lot of people get uncomfortable because tracking food honestly forces your awareness. And awareness removes the fantasy. You can no longer say, I think I'm eating healthy. You actually have to look at your consistency, your portions, your protein amounts, your calorie intake, your habits and patterns. And for some people, that honesty, it feels uncomfortable. But uncomfortable doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Sometimes being uncomfortable is exactly what creates the change. And the next thing to talk about is all or nothing thinking. This one keeps people stuck for years because people are either fully on track or completely off. So the second something goes sideways, they mentally check out. Miss a workout? Well, this week is ruined. Eat something unplanned? I already messed up. Busy week? I'll restart Monday. And then Monday becomes next Monday. And then next month. And then another year passes. And honestly, I think this is one of the biggest mindset shifts I've personally had over the years too. There was absolutely a time earlier in my fitness journey where if things weren't perfect, I felt like I was failing. And now I realize that consistency is not perfection. Consistency is returning quickly. That changes a lot of how we show up because the women who eventually succeed long-term are usually not the women who are the most perfect. They're the women who stop quitting every time things get uncomfortable. The next thing is relying too much on your feelings. And this is a huge one because motivation feels amazing when it's there, but motivation is temporary. There are absolutely days where I don't feel like training. I don't want to run. I don't want to do the heavy things. I don't want to lift the heavy work, right? There's days where life it feels emotionally draining, right? But if I only showed up when I felt perfectly motivated, I never would have built strength. I never would build my endurance, my consistency, my confidence, or even the trust in myself. And honestly, neither will anyone else. Your feelings are not always a reliable guide. Some days you're going to feel amazing, and some days you won't. And if your actions constantly change based on your mood, your results will too. And then we have our expectations. People expect results way faster than their actions support it. And social media has completely distorted this for us, okay? People think that 6 weeks is a long time. They think that 8 weeks should create massive transformation, or that 3 months could completely change everything. Which there's some truth within some of that, but real transformation, a real body change, a real identity change, that happens over months and years and repeated consistency and seasons of growth and adjustment. And I've had to learn patience with this as well on my own journey, especially with running recently. There's moments where I wanted to improve faster. I wanted to run farther, faster, get stronger, faster. But adaptation takes time. Your body needs repeated exposure, repeated recovery, and repeated practice. And truthfully, most people quit before the compounding effect has ever had a chance to actually happen. And finally, people avoid the uncomfortable parts because growth is uncomfortable sometimes. Tracking your food, honestly, is uncomfortable. Pushing heavier weights is uncomfortable. Breaking emotional eating patterns is uncomfortable. Changing your routines is uncomfortable. Being honest with yourself is uncomfortable. So instead, people stay where things feel familiar. The same habits, the same patterns, the same excuses, and repeating the same cycles. And then they wonder why nothing changes. But comfort maintains things. Discomfort changes those things. And I don't mean extremes or types of punishment for yourself. I mean being willing to actually challenge yourself, to stay engaged, to tolerate imperfection, to stop restarting, and to keep showing up long enough for your results to actually happen. Now, I know this episode is a little more direct, but I generally don't want this to come across as you're failing or you're doing everything wrong. That's not the point here, okay? The point is this. If you're not seeing results, there is a reason. And most of the time, it's not a mystery. It's patterns. And once you can actually see those patterns clearly, you can finally start changing them. So instead of asking yourself, why isn't this working? Ask yourself, where am I actually out of alignment? Is it your consistency? Is it your nutrition, your progression with your workouts? Is it your expectations? Are you self-negotiating? Is your mindset a contributing factor? And then pick one thing. Not everything, one thing. Because trying to overhaul your entire life overnight usually just creates overwhelm. And then you restart another cycle. So maybe your next step is just tracking your food honestly. Maybe it's becoming more consistent with your workouts and starting there. Or maybe it's improving your protein intake, or the stopping of the Monday restart cycle and pushing your limits slightly more. Maybe it's just even following through even when you don't feel like it. Start there. Because small aligned actions repeated consistently create real results. Not your occasional effort, not random motivation, and not your good weeks. Consistency. And honestly, that's what I really want you to take from this episode. You're probably not stuck because you don't care. You're stuck because something in your approach is still out of alignment. And once you start fixing that, everything starts moving differently. If this episode hit home for you, I'd love to hear from you. Come message me on Instagram at DL Fitness Coaching and let me know what stood out. And if you're ready for support, you can find more details in the show notes. Thanks for being here, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.